This blade hasn't dulled for 1,000 years. Its steel is tougher than any modern alloy, yet the secret of its creation was lost because of a single small error in a historical chronicle. Today, we will follow the trail of impossible substances that ancient chemists created in simple furnaces, while we spend billions in high-tech laboratories. Imagine a master who has no laser sensors or digital thermometers, yet intuitively feels the movement of atoms. We used to call this alchemy or magic to justify the fact that our best engineers are still scratching their heads. We live in an era of disposable things where everything breaks after 5 years. But today, you will see materials that were created to outlast the mountains themselves. If we have all the technology in the world, why do we still not have the answers? Let's peer into a world of chemistry that reached perfection long before the periodic table ever existed. In the 18th century, the secret of Damascus blades simply evaporated. Europeans tried to replicate them for hundreds of years, but their swords either shattered or dulled instantly. It wasn't until the 21st century that physicists discovered carbon nanotubes within the structure of ancient steel. Ancient blacksmiths were using nanotechnology without even knowing the word. Their secret wasn't just in the metal, but in a specific type of wood that grew only in one region. When those forests were cut down, the unique technology died along with the ecosystem. Most shockingly, the smiths created this nanomaterial during a standard metal purification process. The pattern on the blade isn't just decoration. It's a physical map of carbon threads that make the sword as flexible as a willow branch, yet as hard as a diamond. Chroniclers claim these blades could slice a hair floating in the air, but wouldn't chip when striking stone. We tried to recreate them in modern vacuum furnaces using the purest iron, but we only got pale imitations. It turns out the ancient masters used dirty ore with traces of tungsten and vanadium, which triggered the necessary reaction. We became too sterile to understand the raw power of antiquity. This weapon held the entire world in fear for over 500 years. A substance that was impossible to extinguish with water. It burned brighter than the sun and clung to skin like liquid death. To this day, we do not know the exact formula of this mixture. Scientists later created napalm, but Greek fire was more eco-friendly, more stable, and far more dangerous in practice. The secret of the composition was guarded under threat of death and went to the grave with the last emperor of Byzantium. The psychological effect was even more terrifying than the flames themselves. Enemies believed the Byzantines had summoned demons from hell. When this mixture hit a ship, ordinary water only fueled the blaze, turning the deck into a fiery trap. The launching mechanism, the siphon, was essentially the first flamethrower in history, operating under immense pressure. The blueprints for these pumps were destroyed immediately after construction, and siphon operators lived in total isolation so they wouldn't accidentally reveal the secret. Today, we can create something similar from complex petroleum products, but the ancient formula was based on natural resins and oils that didn't lose their properties for decades. This was a secret that literally built an empire, and its loss marked the beginning of the end for Great Byzantium. The Romans knew how to do what we now call quantum dots. The Lycurgus Cup changes its color depending on how the light hits it. How is this possible? Modern analysis has shown that particles of gold and silver, exactly 50 nanometers in size, were added to the glass that is 1,000 times smaller than a grain of salt. How did they achieve such incredible precision without computers or microscopes? Was it a happy accident or a technology elevated to the rank of high art? To give you an idea of the level of mastery, if the particles were even 10 nanometers larger or smaller, the optical effect would simply vanish. Roman masters created plasmon resonance technology 1,600 years before modern physics could even explain the phenomenon. We only discovered this secret in 1990 when we examined the cup under an electron microscope. But the most frightening part is the repeatability. This wasn't a one-off lucky specimen. Archaeologists have found fragments of other vessels with similar properties. This means the ancients had a mass production line for nanoglass. While we are only just learning to apply these properties in nanomedicine and ultra-efficient solar panels, modern concrete begins to crumble after just 50 years, especially in saltwater. Yet, Roman harbors and breakwaters have stood motionless for 2 millennia, only growing stronger over time. Scientists from MIT only figured out the magic in 2023. The Romans used hot mixing and left tiny fragments of lime, known as lime clasts, in the concrete. When a microcrack appears in the structure and water enters, these inclusions dissolve and literally reseal the damage from the inside. For centuries, we viewed these white lumps as a sign of poor workmanship by ancient builders, when in fact, it was a sophisticated regeneration system. Imagine if our roads and foundations could heal themselves like a living organism. The Romans created a material that uses the very destructive power of water to become a monolith. We spend trillions on infrastructure repair, while the recipe for eternity was written in Latin and sat gathering dust in archives for hundreds of years while we thought we were smarter than our ancestors. This is a story about how secrets are lost even in our modern age. In the 1980s, a hairdresser named Morris Ward invented a material called Starlite. This plastic could withstand temperatures of 10,000 degrees Celsius, hotter than the surface of the sun. During tests, a thin layer of the material protected a raw egg from a high-power laser and even survived a simulated nuclear flash. NASA and tech giants offered Ward billions, but he was so paranoid about theft that he refused to write down the formula. In 2011, the inventor died, taking the secret with him. Scientists around the world are still trying to recreate Starlite using the most complex polymers, but their results don't even come close to what a hairdresser mixed in his kitchen. This is living proof that a great discovery can be made by a single individual, and just as easily, it can disappear forever. We are used to believing that corporations know everything, but Starlite reminds us, we are only one mistake or one death away from losing a technology that could have changed the face of aerospace and fire safety. Scattered across Europe are the ruins of more than 200 fortresses whose walls have turned to glass. The stones literally melted and fused into a single mass. The problem is that granite and basalt melt at temperatures above 1,100 degrees Celsius. An ordinary campfire or even a massive fire during a siege cannot produce that much heat across hundreds of meters of wall. How did the ancient Celts and Picts turn kilometers of stone into glass? This wasn't an accident. Vitrification made the wall impenetrable to battering rams and time. Some theories suggest that the builders created giant furnaces right inside the walls, using complex ventilation systems to blast the heat. But the logistics of such a process seem impossible for that era. They would have needed thousands of tons of wood and months of continuous burning. We still debate whether this was a defensive technology or an unknown way for enemies to destroy the forts. Looking at these melted rocks, you realize the ancients had ways of controlling energy and heat that we can only replicate today in industrial blast furnaces, but certainly not in the open air among the hills of Scotland. Ancient chronicles preserve a chilling story of a master who brought Emperor Tiberius a bowl made of flexible glass. When the master threw it on the floor, it didn't break. It only dented like a silver cup. He fixed the dent with an ordinary hammer before the eyes of the astonished court. Instead of a reward, the emperor ordered the inventor executed and his workshop destroyed. Tiberius feared that a material stronger than metal but clearer than air would devalue gold and ruin the empire's economy. Since then, the recipe for vitrum flexile has been considered a legend. But in the 21st century, chemists suggest that the master might have added boric acid to the glass or used special additives from Arab countries, creating a prototype of modern borosilicate glass or even a nanocomposite. This was a technology capable of sparking an industrial revolution 1,800 years ahead of its time. But the fear of one ruler and the greed of the elite erase the discovery from history. How many more times has humanity chosen stability over progress? And how many brilliant ideas have been buried in nameless graves simply because they were too perfect for their time? We are used to thinking that we are the pinnacle of human development. No, history is not a smooth ladder upwards. It is a complex cardiogram. We can launch rockets to Mars, but we cannot make concrete that will last 2,000 years in aggressive seawater like the Romans did. We have become masters of numbers and algorithms. But our ancestors were the true masters of matter itself. Every time a great master dies without leaving a student, all of humanity takes a step back into the darkness. These points on the map are not just beautiful ruins. They are a serious warning. We naively think our knowledge is perfectly safe in cloud storage and on servers, but one powerful solar flare or a global collapse, and we are back in the Stone Age, looking at the Pantheon as the work of gods, not men. Our greatness is actually very fragile, and true knowledge requires not just data, but living hands that remember the recipe. What modern thing, in your opinion, will seem like magic in 1,000 years? Write in the comments. Let's see what we believe in. And subscribe so you don't become part of just another forgotten civilization.